Hello everyone. In this video lecture, I'm going to talk to you about the Pharmakos and the conclusion to Oedipus's narrative. The Pharmakos is a concept from the Hellenistic period that we're going to integrate into our discussion of this text in order to understand the role that Oedipus plays in the society that we have depicted here. Once we have an understanding of the role of the Pharmakos and what the Pharmakos is, we can better appreciate how Sophocles is framing Oedipus, particularly in these last moments. Now, the Pharmakos in Greek tradition was a kind of a humanoid scapegoat who, in various different city-states such as Athens, was presented as a kind of sacrifice for the city. Every year, a particular individual in this city who was deformed or lame, or who had some kind of defect or was a slave would be selected for a process of ritual purgation. The city would essentially place on that individual all the various different crimes and afflictions and the punishments of the gods. This person would go through a series of ritualized actions whereby he would have specialized meals prepared for him. He would undergo almost like ritualistic beatings and the like until he was finally cast free from the city. You can think of this pharmakos as a form of scapegoat, wherein the people in this city are placing on him all the collective guilt, shame, and crimes of the civilization. They're taking this physical instantiation of that quote-unquote ugliness of their crimes and their sins, putting on him, and then casting it out, expelling him as if they can expel their own sins from the civilization. In a sense, it's like a social form of catharsis. There's a deliberate paralleling on Sophocles' part between the function of tragedy as a form of cathartic enterprise, whereby you purge yourself of these negative feelings by experiencing pity and terror in the safe confines of fiction, and the process of expelling the pharmakos from the civilization. Oedipus himself is, in a sense, a kind of pharmakos. There is something intensely satisfying about Oedipus's tragic narrative, and in the Pharmakos' expulsion from the city. It's both an affirmation that the sin will be punished, or both of them are affirmations. Both of them are affirmations that sin will always be punished, that there's some kind of object for the divine wrath of the gods to fall upon. The conclusion to Oedipus's narrative, then, allows for a collective burden to be lifted, just like with the Pharmakos. The collective sins of the city here, of Thebes, in that they failed to actually hunt down the murderer of Laius, they were indolent, and they shirked their responsibilities, have all been displaced onto Oedipus such that he bears the burden of it all, and is thus cast out of the city in order to cure it of its sin, to cure it of its plague. That reality of Oedipus as the Pharmakos reflects the great conflict in his identity. Oedipus is savior and sinner, disease and criminal, the most blessed man, the most intelligent man, the man who is favored by the gods, the famous Oedipus, but also the man who is crippled in the foot, we know, from the childhood injury that he sustained, and also deformed and ugly and hideous as he has blinded himself. He is the wise man, the man who was so intelligent that he could answer the Sphinx riddle, but also blind, forever blind, mired in ignorance, and now at the end of the play, after he has put out his own eyes, completely physically blind, ironically at the same time, that he can see, that he knows, and he understands his own identity and his place in the world. In all these ways, this story tells us two things. First, the tale of the tragic hero teaches us how to suffer and to endure, to experience the most horrendous things, to be tossed about by the waves of fortune, a ship lost in the storm, but to suffer through the pains of life and to emerge with our heads held high. Oedipus at the end of this play, and we'll explore this as we think about specific examples, Oedipus at the end of this play is calm and resolute. He no longer has this sense of overweening pride or a need to impose himself upon the world. Instead, he accepts the world as it is, accepts his fate, his punishment, and all the intended horrors associated with it, without complaint. There's this kind of beatific calm that typifies him as we move on through this last portion of the play. The purpose being an illustration of how we as human beings should face the travails that beset us, not with vain struggles and outrage and anger and rashness, but with a recognition that what will be will be. Our fates are as the gods have determined. Now, we may not believe in gods or fates in the same way, but that stoicism in the face of our suffering is a lesson that we might wish to take for ourselves, that we should endure those pains with our heads held high like Oedipus, even as the blood and gore pours out from our eyes, even as we suffer the outrageous stings of fortune. We can still endure with dignity. And no matter what end we reach, no matter what kind of contagion and infection and benighted, blighted thing we might be by that end, we can still have with us and project into the world an air of respectability. But there is also something incredibly satisfying about Oedipus's conclusion, in that by the end of this play, none of these conflicting aspects of his identity are reconciled into a gestalt whole. Oedipus is all of these disparate things: savior and disease or criminal, blighted man, cripple, and hero, wise man and blind man, all of these things at once. There's something irreconcilable about the infinite complexity of his identity. There's no way that we can read him or reduce him down into one fixed type or stereotype or fixed figure. He is a fundamentally human character in his embodiment of all these varied passions and abilities and natures, as the play tells us we all are. So there is in Oedipus's character a reflection on the nature of human identity as something that can't be reduced down, horrifyingly and wondrously complex. Now, this kind of beatific calm that Oedipus experiences when he finally accepts the primacy of fate, the primacy of the gods over his own ability to try to control his destiny, becomes more apparent as we look through these last 200 lines of the play. In line 1297, the chorus looks upon Oedipus as he walks in and says, "Amazing horror, nothing worse can come upon a man. Was it madness that struck your mind? Or was it a god great bounds away who leapt upon your life, bringing disaster?" So it asks Oedipus, in not so many words, did you do this? Was this a product of your own malformed mind? Or is it the product of the gods that you have so blinded yourself? Cry, cry, misfortune. I cannot bear to look. Many things I wish to ask, I wish to learn, I wish to see, but you are blinding me with horror. So the chorus looks at Oedipus and says, I want knowledge, I'm desperate for it. Just as Oedipus was. Oedipus, the master of riddle, the solver of problems, the quester after truth and identity. I feel that. I feel your character and the definitional attributes of your character within me, but you're blinding me with horror. When I look upon you, you are now again, remember that the chorus said, you are the pattern of my life. Here it is again. You are the pattern of my life. You blind me with horror. I don't want to know, because when I look upon you, I see you so horrifying that I don't want to actually have an understanding of what has happened to you. But more than that, it's that I don't want the answers to my questions. I don't want to quest after knowledge when I see the results of doing so. You are still the pattern of my behavior. Oedipus in line 1313. O darkness, hideous clouds engulf me, swept in by ill wind, inescapable, unspeakable. Oh, again and again, so much agony, memories stabbing, piercing me with pains. So that litany of self-mutilation as he gouges out his eyes is just an external reflection of the reality of his inner being. Memories stab at him, pierce him with pain, and he is mired in hideous darkness. That's all that he ever was, and now he recognizes it. O darkness, hideous clouds engulf me. All of us live our lives in those hideous clouds of darkness, in ignorance. Oedipus responds to the chorus by saying, now that I'm in darkness, I have sight. Now that I recognize that I've always been blind, I can see. A friend, here, you'd stay for me, solid in support, you'd help a blind man? Care for me? He sighs, this I see despite the darkness. I hear you. I know your voice. So there's a kind of penetrating insight that Oedipus has gained. He can tell who this person is. He's been able to gain insight and recognition in identity. Right? He understands his own identity. He has blinded himself, and now he is able to see the truth of identity as he does with both himself and with the chorus. I hear you, I know your voice. I'm calm now, I'm at peace. I'm no longer blinded by seeing. Ah, what dreadful thing have you done? How could you bear to put out your own sight? What god spurned you on? Oedipus, Apollo. It was Apollo, my friends. Agony after agony he brought them on. But I did this by my own hand. Why should I have eyes when there's nothing sweet to see? So in this, we have Sophocles' partial answer to the question or the debate between fate and free will. That answer is that Apollo has set this fate upon us. He has determined what we will go through. But the subjective response that we have to those travails, Oedipus putting out his own eyes in misery and grief, but also in the calm that he experiences now. If you look at that film adaptation, you see that the actors portraying Oedipus in the film adaptation with the extensive makeup and masks delivers these lines with a kind of serenity. Because Oedipus has given in, he's accepted the inescapability of his fate. As he said in 315, or 1315, inescapable fate. In so doing, he's recognized the limitations of human free will, that we have the choice as to how we'll respond to the fates that are given to us by the gods. This I did with my own hands. We have a choice as to how to bear it, how to endure it, steadfastly, nobly, or ignobly, with defiance, pitiable and pointless. The great reality of tragedy, that it is better to die than live, is again reaffirmed to us in line 1389. Sweet oblivion, where the mind exists beyond the bounds of grief, awaits Oedipus. He longs for his death, to shut his eyes and allow his broken body to depart. The symbol of the threefold path returns to us again, and Oedipus recognizes its true nature here. What he thought was choice was in reality all paths converging on one spot. The three ways at that hidden gully, he says in line 1397. The narrow track through the woods where I spilled my father's blood, my own blood. Do you remember? The triple path witnessed what I did. Do you see where you have led me? That triple path, every one of those paths, led him to this point. Marriage, the marriage bond bred me, bought me up to wed my own blood. Kin created kin, fathers, brothers, sons, mixed with mothers, brides, and wives. Humanity's foulest deeds. I cannot speak of such abhorrent acts. By all the gods, you must let me hide away, cast me into the sea, kill me, shun me from sight. So Oedipus is the pharmakos, because he is now bearing all these sins, because he is the infection that needs to be purged from the city, must be cast out. My affliction cannot cause you any harm. No one but me is able to endure this pain. So he becomes, again, that one individual standing in defense of the city, as he was earlier on. Now the contagion, rather than savior, being cast out. Creon enters into the scene, and says that he will not punish Oedipus or cast him out or act in line 1437. I would have already done so. That is, cast him out. Without fail, but first I had to discover what the god wished me to do. In time of great need, we should know for sure what we must do. So Creon is responding to what Oedipus tried to do earlier on in the play, act rashly in order to defend his tyranny, in order to defend his kingship, and cast out Creon, whom he was convinced, without sufficient evidence, was responsible for the death of Laius. Oedipus is now corrected, and Creon offers it by saying, we must act only when we know. We must act only when the gods have given us direction. That, Oedipus, is the lesson that I have learned from your failures. Oedipus, however, accepts this because he accepts all fate. He accepts whatever is done to him. In line 1455 and thereabouts, he is going to go where he was left by his parents to die. There they wanted me dead, there I will die. Now I know that no ordinary end waits for me. There was a reason I was spared from death. Some other daunting destiny. Let fate guide where I go, and what will be, will be. So Oedipus, the great man, the master of his destiny and his fortune, the man who is able to transcend them and forge his own path, now finds himself reconciled to his fate. And because of that, the chorus is able to offer its concluding commentary. Behold, all you who dwell in Thebes, this is Oedipus. He knew the riddle's answer. He held great power. He was wise, intelligent, the best of us, the most noble, the most giving, the most caring for his people. He held great power both as a man because of his abilities and as a king because he ruled this city. And we all looked at his success with envy. Remember, we now return to that idea of the struggle for power inside the city that raises men up, that allows the greatest man to emerge, the cream of the crop, and to control the city, to command it, to the benefit of all, because the most talented should rule. We looked on him with envy, but now a terrible wave of trouble sweeps over him. Therefore, we know. Always look to the last day, and never say a man is happy unless he's crossed life's boundaries free from grief. Now, this moment appears to be a solid, secure resolution to all the ambiguities of the play. This play has been a work of ambiguity. All the characters have been mired in uncertainty. Oedipus's identity has been wrenched back and forth between those various different poles that we've discussed. Here, the chorus seems to offer us a conclusion. Never say a man is happy unless he's crossed life's boundaries free from grief. But the meaning of that assertion is itself ambiguous. Rather than offering us closure to the play, possibilities explode for us. Because it could either mean that we can never be sure of a man's fate and fortune, whether he's successful or unsuccessful, good or evil, until he has died, until he has left this world free from grief. He's ended his life without having everything that he loved and everything that he was taken away from him. Oedipus we thought was blessed. We called him good. We called him great. But now he is suffering grief, so we can never know until he's dead and gone what his life actually was. That's one reading. The other reading is we can never say that a man is happy until he is truly happy, freed from all griefs by the sweet release of death. That's the only time that we are truly happy, when we no longer suffer the griefs of life. So we have two conflicting interpretations that are left open to us by this ending of the play that's supposed to bring us to resolution and conclusion. In a sense, then, this capstone comment by the chorus is a reflection of the complexity, the incomprehensible complexity of the human condition. Just as Oedipus can never be reconciled in his identity to one nature, to one kind of being, so too there are no answers for these great questions of life, because the play ends on a question, an open question that it poses to us. What is it actually saying? Which of these two interpretations is the one that we accept? We don't know. This concludes our video lectures for the course. Of course, we have the final essay on Oedipus and the final test that will be posted a week before the end of the semester. If you need help with those, of course, I invite you to reach out to me, and I'll offer you what assistance I can. Take care of yourselves, and all the best.